Hey people, this is a new video for an interview that I did. This was actually recorded like a year and a half ago. Things have just kind of got in the way, but I just think it's a really important video to post because some people might want to be a concept artist. I hope you really enjoy this conversation that I had. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. In this video, I'm going to be talking with an amazing concept artist called Bimpe Alliu. She has been in the visual effects industry as a concept artist. Her work includes films such as Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Wandavision, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, the Sandman Netflix series, and Spider-Man Far From Home. In this video, I'm going to talk about her journey of how she became a concept artist. If there's any information that will come out throughout the video, I'll put in the description below. So how are you doing today, Bimpe?
I'm good, thank you very, very much. Thank you for having me. The sun is out. It's a nice weekend, so yeah, I'm really good. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
like spring is springing.
Yes, yes, properly. Like my melanin needs topping up. Yes, I'm happy. The sun is
Yes,
out.
finally. Yeah. As soon as like the clocks went forward or back, sorry, then it's like, finally, like 6 o'clock isn't so dark.
Yeah, it's nice. I was getting used to like all the dark mornings because I wake up like I'm an early waker and like I do like my like ritual like meditations and yoga and stuff like that, and I quite like that. But
Yeah.
now that the sun is actually out earlier, I'm like, no, actually I prefer this a
Yeah.
lot more. This is much nicer. Everything's awake. The animals are awake. Everything's alive.
Yes,
It's
but
nice.
yeah, the flowers are blooming. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so in terms of like your work, can you tell us a bit about your how you got into becoming a concept artist and your career, how you started?
So I have been a concept artist now for about 5 years. I've been working at my company, Industrial Light and Magic, for the last 7 years, as of
Okay,
a couple of days ago.
congrats.
And I started pretty much from the beginning there, in terms of I started off as a runner, and then I moved into an art assistant position, and then I moved into a concept art position. So it's kind of I've had my whole concept, or at least professional concept art career within this industry, which has been really, really nice. And I've been able to like grow within my company and learn a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of how I started officially, I always wanted to be an artist, and my
Mm.
parents said no. They're like,
Yes.
you're not going to make no money from like being an artist. What you're going to be is a doctor and a lawyer. And so I was still super young and was like, okay, cool, this is what my parents said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to trust them.
Yeah.
They didn't know anybody else who kind of like looked like us who was an artist or anything like that.
Mm.
They long associated art with not making any money and struggling, and so as I've grown older as well, I kind of see their point of view now, and I understand where they were kind of coming from
Yeah.
in wanting me to not go into art. So I was still always like scribbling, doing all my Dragon Ball Z drawings and all that kind of stuff for kids in
Yeah.
the playground, but they were kind of like, this is just a hobby. This is not what you're going to do professionally. And I was like, you know what, yeah, okay, I believe you, I accept that. And so that's what I just kept telling myself, it's just a hobby. I did GCSE art, loved it. GCSE A level, loved it.
Yeah.
But I promised my parents that art was just a hobby. Like, I also now believed by this point that I wouldn't be able to work as
Okay.
an artist.
Mm.
And I'd kind of grown up reading comics and watching anime and reading manga, and so I just always been in love with all this stuff. Like, I know so
Yeah.
many people are, and I
Yeah.
was always just so inspired by it. But again, I promised my parents, so that
Mm.
was it. Like, art was
Yeah.
done. By the time it kind of got to, okay, university choices, I hadn't chosen anything that would require me to be a doctor or a lawyer in terms of A level. And so we kind of reached a compromise where it was like, okay, well, I'll do history of art. That's not
Okay.
me being an artist, but I will, this was my impression at the time at least, like I will work in galleries, I'll kind
Yeah.
of be like a curator or
Wow.
something like that. And that was like a happy compromise with my parents, because they're like,
Okay.
okay, cool, we don't know any of these curator people, but you'll be wearing suits and stuff. This sounds much nicer than you being an artist scribbling around not doing anything. So that was
Yeah.
the compromise. So I went to Manchester for 3 years where I studied history of art.
Yeah.
By the time I finished that, I was like, nah, this isn't
Not for
this
me.
isn't what I want to do. Yeah, I learned a hell of a lot. I learned a lot about kind of obviously the craft that I'd kind of grown to love in its various facets and what that looked like.
Mm.
But it just didn't. I didn't do any physical art, which I'd already agreed to, like, because I'd given it up because it was just a hobby.
Right.
Um, but I didn't do any physical art, any drawing or anything for 3 years,
Yeah.
essentially, going from having drawn every single day and just it being an
Like
extension of
learning
me. I
about.
just stopped completely, and I didn't realize how much that impacted me until much later on. But yeah, so I finished the course, and then was like, well, yeah, this isn't not what I want to do. So what is it that I do want to do, which isn't
Mm.
history of art, but then also isn't physical art, because I've made this promise to my parents.
Yeah.
And I kind of was just like, okay, well, one of the things I'm really, really interested in is like web design and coding. And I'm really like fiddly like that. I love that kind of thing. I love like the back end of like code and all that kind of stuff. And I'd spent a couple of summers like building my own websites and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll do something like that. And social media still wasn't like a thing back then. Like Facebook had only just kind of started being a thing by the time I was going to uni.
Yeah.
So it was still relatively new. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll also go into social media. I'm interested in all of this kind of stuff. I'm interested in web design and coding and all this digital stuff. So I ended up doing social media for a couple
Mm.
of years. I interned at a company and then stayed at that company afterwards.
Yeah.
And through that, started working in social media for music. So I was working for Sony at this company for a while, and
Mm.
then went in house to work for Sony to do social media. So I was doing that. I was working in social media for about a year and a half, nearly 2 years, and then decided that I'm not really sure like what I want to do anymore. I'm not really sure like if this is for me. But then also at the same time, um, all the Marvel films were coming out, like Iron Man had come out and all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. And just that passion kind of started reigniting again.
Mm.
Again,
Yeah.
I'd grown up reading comics
Mm.
and I was just so excited by all these films coming out, like loads of people were, and I was just like, this is the stuff that I was reading. And then just started to do a little bit of research. I was like, oh, I'd love to be part of this, but I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what part of this actually meant.
Yeah.
And then I found a word called VFX. And I was
Okay.
just like, what is this VFX they speak of? What is this visual effects? Because I was always under the assumption these films got made. Like, I didn't know how they got made. And I realized a lot of other people think the same way. Um,
Mm.
but the only word I really knew in VFX was animation. So I'd always classed these entire films as just animation. When
Mm.
I'd grown up watching like all like the like 2D films and anime, that was like animation. So that was the only word I knew and understood. Movies, animation, and then now this new word, visual effects.
Mm.
And the more research I did, I found out that like, oh, like they need art to also do these kinds of things. But that was a little bit like later down the line. And by that point, I'd kind of decided, okay, I want to do like, I want to make these films. I don't know what that's going to look like. I've never done
Mm.
any of this stuff before, but this is something that really excites me, especially these Marvel films, and I want to be part of them. So this
Yeah.
is what I want to make these films. I want to be part of that. So I basically, I forgot to mention, what I'd done before was, I'd also had this kind of like crisis of faith and confidence before where I was just like, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to do social media. So what I'd done was looked into doing forensic art because I was still had that passion to do art.
Okay.
But I was like, but how can this combine with science so my parents are happy? But I also did have a bit of a passion for biology by that point, and
Oh,
then
okay.
stumbled upon forensic art. And so I
Mm.
applied to do that course, got onto the course, but I had no money. So I had to defer my place, and I worked, and then I carried on working to kind of like save up for money again. So by the time it came around to reapplying to the course, the
Yeah.
Marvel films were coming out, and that's when I discovered the visual effects course at the same uni in
Right.
Dundee,
Mm.
and applied to do the visual effects course instead. And despite having like no experience in anything like 3D or any of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
submitted a portfolio that was just full of like my illustrations and comic
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that I'd done, and got really lucky. And I'm so grateful that the course leader it was like, cool, I see potential here, like I'll accept her onto the course. And I remember him saying to me, he was like, you were the first person I accepted. I was like, thank you so
Oh, that's
much.
so nice.
So like 6 months later, off I went to like Scotland, up into Dundee. I'd never been before, and I
Yeah.
still didn't really know anything about VFX, and just
Yeah.
went and like did this course. I got given like a book of like how to use Maya, which is like a 3D package,
Yeah.
because I knew I was going to be using that on the course. I got that for my birthday, and off I went, like just up to Dundee with this book. And just, yeah, did this course, and I still say now it was one of like the best years of my life,
Oh, yeah,
because
that's
it
really
was just
good.
a decision that I made for myself, and I feel like it was the first decision I'd made for myself properly.
Yeah, yeah,
Defied my parents,
yeah.
but was like really passionate about, like, this is what I want to do. I didn't know what the end goal was going to look like, and that's
Yeah.
really scary to kind of make those decisions. But
Mm,
I was just like, I just knew that by this point I couldn't not be connected to doing art in some shape or form.
yeah.
Um, and so it was whilst I was there, I learned about like concept art, and I was like, oh my God, so I can actually work as an actual artist. Like, I can be an
Mm,
artist drawing stuff. Like, visual effects looks like so many things. Obviously, you've got like concept artists, modelers, texture artists, and I tried so many different things because I was just so excited by the process of how these films actually came together. All these films that I love, how like they were actually made and how many people made them. And I just
mm,
find I really like processes, and I just thought that was like incredible. And then knowing that there was a place for me as an artist to be able to
mm,
do that, and I just learned so much from so many people who knew so much more than I did about so many different things, not just the technical aspect, but like the
mm,
art of filmmaking and different illustration styles, and just all these things that I was able to kind of take back with me when I eventually came back to London, and
yeah,
with a new set of 3D skills because I'd never done it before, and that was
yeah.
great. I was just carrying on experimenting. So then we came back to London because we had like a class trip, but I'm from London anyway. And
Mm,
then our course leader had organised a few visits to some visual effects studios,
okay.
just so they could kind of talk to us and all that kind of stuff and give us an idea of what we could do.
Mm,
And one of the places was ILM, and they kind of did like talks for like uni students and everything. So we went along, and I was just like, oh, like blinking around. At the same time, though, I didn't really have any firm expectations. I just kind of knew that I was grateful to have done this course.
mm,
I was kind of all geared and ready to start like in a really small company and work my way up, because I was like, this is a career change for me. I'm
yeah.
just still so excited that I get to do this now,
Mm,
hopefully full time. And I really wanted to like work at it, and I obviously kind of like had goals to like, oh, I want to make Marvel things one day, but I was also like, I'm happy to just start wherever. So that was my intention. um and so yeah, we were at ILM, and they were like, oh, we offer work experience, so you get to like shadow the runners for a week. So I went and
okay.
did that. I applied to do that and went and did that for a week, and then they asked me to come back as a runner, and I was like, oh my God, okay, yeah, cool, great.
Yeah.
And again, even just like, it was really short amount of time, but I just learned so much getting to kind of like talk to people again, learn more about the process, not
Mm,
just within the company, but the effects in general.
mm,
And then I'd said kind of like really early on that I was interested in the art department. I still wasn't 100% sure what they did within that space, but I just knew they did the art that I wanted to do.
yeah.
Um, and the
Cool
pictures that they
stuff.
picked are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that really, really early on to the HR manager at the time, and like the interim HR manager at the time. And then an art assistant position came up, and
Mm,
she had remembered that I'd spoken to her about this just completely randomly offhand. Like, when you just kind of have you, because you
yeah.
get to meet so many people, and they're like, oh, like, what do you do? What are you interested in? All that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And you just get to
Yeah.
know people. That's what was really nice about being a runner as well.
Mm,
And it was just a really casual conversation. And she remembered that. So when they had that opening for an art assistant, obviously they kind of like interviewed people for it. But she was also like, oh, there's also a runner here that like is interested in coming in the art department.
okay.
And so she like came up to me one day and was like, the head of the art department's just finished on set. He's going to be here for like 2 days. The art department managers from San Francisco are also going to be here for like
Mm,
a day. So hey, are you free for like 20 minutes to just like go and interview with them? And I was like, oh yeah,
wow.
okay, sure. So like off I went, to just like suddenly have this interview to kind of get into the art department, or at least to kind of like speak to them. And I kind of said to myself, look, the best that I can do is just like show up as me, which I
Mm,
think I did in a really weird way, in that like we were just like having casual conversation, and they were like, oh, so what like are some of your favorite films? And there I was just like, well, I'm just gonna be me. Oh yeah, Independence Day, Clueless, bring it on. Because no point in kind of saying something that like isn't true, and then obviously kind of being caught out by that. And hopefully I think it worked, because I ended up in there. But
yeah.
like I think there's something to be said for, again, like just showing up as yourself, because you
Mm,
never know obviously who you're talking to, and they could be like, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for in a person.
mm.
Somebody that's kind of like, they know what they like and unashamedly know what they like. But also I think I was being a little bit naive about it. But yeah,
Mm,
so then a couple of days later I found out that I got the role, and then started
yeah.
as an art assistant, and then eventually like worked my way up into a junior concept
Yeah.
art role, and now in like the mid concept art role, which I'm where I'm
Yeah.
at now. So yeah, just concept
Yeah.
artist. So yeah, it's been, I've just given you a whole like
No, it's so good.
backstory, but but yeah, that's the shortest bit being my time at ILM. But yeah, so it's been a really interesting and important kind of 7-year journey. I think I
Yeah.
learned a lot about myself,
Mm.
like just so many challenges I felt like I've kind of had to face in the role that really kind of push you, because it pulls you up. You are forced to move along with it. Like
Mm.
working with so many like phenomenal artists, like it makes me cry. Like so many people, like a lot of the people that I work with even still now, and some of the people that my ex-colleagues that no longer work at the company, like they
Mm.
are just some of the most incredible artists that I've had like the pleasure of like working with, let alone meeting, and
Mm.
just to learn so much from. And I look at some of my older stuff to now and I'm like, oh my god, I never thought it was possible to like grow that much as an artist. And
Yeah.
I remember when I was still using the Twitter like years ago, I
Mm.
remember seeing like a post from an artist who'd like shown his work of like when he'd first was just like, I want to be an artist.
Mm.
And then 10 years later, kind of like shown a concept that he'd done. And I remember saving that, like screenshotting it and saving it and looking at it like every color, like couple of weeks, be like, okay, I can grow. Because obviously, as an artist, sometimes you just have these massive crises where you're just like, this isn't good enough. I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
This isn't any good. And I
Mm.
would just like look at it to like remind myself. And then I found it again randomly like 4 years ago, and I was looking at it and I was looking at the name. I was like, wait a second, I recognize this name. And then it turned out that the guy that had posted that is one of the senior concept artists in Vancouver,
Oh.
like at my company. And I messaged him and I was just like, thank you so much, Koji. Like this post inspired me so much when I was thinking that I wouldn't be able to do this. And
Yeah.
it kind of felt really like full circle in this kind
Yeah.
of way. And there's been loads of other little instances and synchronicities where I've just been like, oh my god, wow, that's just it's good, it's amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for kind of being able to have learned, like I've been able to obviously to be in the role that I'm at,
Yeah.
to be able to do things like this as well, and to
Mm.
just keep growing and learning and kind of like share my experiences, because the more that I've done of these, like the more people that kind of have said things similar where their
Mm.
parents, especially those of us of color, like their parents
Yeah.
have been like, yeah, this, we
Done
didn't want you
that.
to do this, we want you to do something else. So I feel like that automatically puts us on a bit of a back foot, and regardless of other areas as well. But
Yeah.
because mentally sometimes we struggle a little bit more to like additionally have that additional faith in ourselves to kind of bypass a lot of that old conditioning of always hearing can't, shouldn't, won't, can't, shouldn't,
Yeah.
won't,
Yeah.
and having to break that wall down. And I know it took me a really long time to break that down. Even when I was in the art assistant role, there were so many times where I was just like, I just don't think I'm able to do this. And it was only me holding myself back. And once I was able to do that, like my work flourished, like things just got easier. And I look back at it and I'm just like, I love storytelling.
Mm.
I love it in all its capacities. I love it visually. I love
Mm.
it musically. Like I just love all those nuances of that. And I'm so grateful that I get to do this like
Yeah.
full time, like hobby and as a job, that I
Yeah.
get to attempt to kind of tell these stories in a medium that has been so influential to my
Mm.
life
Mm.
growing up. And I think that that's really powerful. And it's always really nice to remember why I want to do this.
Mm.
Because again, some days get really difficult, but then I just remember like this is the stuff that I've always loved for so long, and I get to
Yeah.
do
You
that.
can
So,
see that in your work as well,
oh,
like
thank
in your
you.
personal work. Like
Thank you very
it's
much.
just like so all the like environments and the characters are just like you can just tell that there's a passion there for storytelling and the way how
Thank you.
you paint and everything. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, is this all just in my head? Is this going to make any sense? But at the same time, it shouldn't. Like that's what your personal work is about. Your personal work is an extension of your
Mm.
own voice if you really allow it to be.
Yeah.
And again, that's what I love so much about the craft that we do as artists. And again, in any form, whether that's like concept, illustration, animation, like music, acting, like our craft is an extension of
Mm.
how we choose to use our voice, and that is consistently and constantly developing over time, changing and adapting. Sometimes
Mm.
we return back to the things that made us passionate about it in the first place, but I think it's so I'm so grateful that I get to use my voice in this way and
Yeah.
express a lot of the things that are kind of like in my mind, or just
Yeah.
ideas that I want to play around with. And when I look at so many other people's work as well, I'm just like, oh, that's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's exciting to
Inspiring as
see.
well. Can you tell me more about like what you do in your role? Because I guess coming from more of a 2D animation
Mm.
background, I don't know how what your team like size is like. Is it a diverse team, or like, and then how do the projects like get separated? Is it like per film, or you work in like set like maybe like a collection of films per like a at the same
Mm.
time? Like how does it
Oh
work
yeah,
when
yeah,
you
of course.
yeah.
So our team is kind of pretty small. Art departments kind of tend to be, because we work so quickly as well. You don't need like loads and loads of people.
Yeah.
And we've got art departments in most of our studios. So obviously London, San Francisco,
Mm,
Vancouver. We've got a small team in Sydney,
okay.
and then we've got a really small team in Singapore. Like just one
Yeah.
person, one of my friends.
Oh wow.
So we've got like active art departments across the board. My department, there are, doing a quick mental count, I'm like, I should have on my head. There are 10 of us.
Yes.
Um, yeah, there are 10 of us.
Mm,
But that also includes our art department manager and our art assistant. So
okay.
there are 8 active like concept artists.
Okay.
Um, I feel like I've suddenly got that number wrong. Sorry, guys, if I have.
It's
If anything, I've
okay.
included more people instead of less. But so as I said, we tend to kind of work quite quickly. So sometimes we can be turning over like 20 concepts a day. It just depends on what it is.
Mm,
Sometimes, depending on what the brief is, it can just be like one concept that you're working on across the day or the week, because it takes so long to do.
yeah.
And we tend to kind of be like, everyone will be working on, like, we call them like shows, and
Mm,
that will be like film or TV show.
mm,
So sometimes like I can be working on a show,
mm,
and then like the artist next to me can be working on a different show, and other artists can be working on a different show. Or
right.
sometimes you can get a few people working on the same show. It just depends on what the needs are of the client, and usually that can be, the client would either be like the director or the
Mm,
production designer or the VFX
right.
supervisor. So they'll kind of like indicate, oh, we need an artist, a concept artist, and they'll kind of say if they need a couple or they'll need like just one, and usually how long they'll think they'll kind of need that for.
Mm,
What you also tend to find as well, at least within my department, is sometimes one artist can start on something, but then they go on to another show, so somebody else can take over
right.
what that person was working on. The
Okay.
amount of time that you're working on something can change as well. Like I've worked on projects sometimes for just a couple of days. There's other
Mm,
projects where I've worked on for like over a year. So
okay.
it can really, really depend on what the needs are of that show, and it can fluctuate. Again, like everything that I'll say is specific to my art department
Right.
at ILM in London, because this can change
Right.
depending on whatever company you're at, and wherever you are in the world. But
Mm,
we also work at all the different stages. So we'll work in pre-production, production, and post-production.
okay.
So we will work with like the director or the production designer
Mm,
before like the film is even like, or the show's even being shot.
mm,
So sometimes we'll be doing like storyboard work, or we'll help with like initial like character designs, environment designs.
okay.
Sometimes that can be if they have a script, sometimes they may not have a script, and you're
Yeah.
kind of bouncing ideas. So it's really nice that you can be really collaborative in that
Okay.
way as well, and
Mm,
really flexible.
mm,
And then sometimes we can then come back on during the actual production stage when they're filming, if they've decided that they need something else, or like new designs, or something's changed, so we can come in during that stage.
mm,
And then we can also come in then also during post-production stage. So if it's come back into our studio specifically, who's
mm.
doing the visual effects, we will then also kind of like work on stuff again, because things change all the time.
Yeah.
Characters that were in it at the very beginning can suddenly disappear, or environments can suddenly disappear. You always get like script
Mm,
changes
mm,
and all
mm.
that kind of stuff. So we work at various other levels. Sometimes we'll be working on pitches as well for the pre-production stage.
Okay.
We can do pre-production work which the company may not then go on to do the visual effects for. So
Right.
it is really kind of open-ended and really, really
Oh
flexible.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
And kind of what I like about my team as well is that it's a mixture of kind of, everyone's able to do a bit of everything. So everyone's able to kind of do a bit of characters, a bit of creature, a bit of environment.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the way that our managers have kind of, and the art director have kind of really like to structure that, because that means that everyone can bounce around and do a
Mm,
little bit of everything. Because sometimes you never know, if you've only got a vehicle person, we may end up having a show where there are no vehicles being done
right. Yeah.
at all. So it's kind of like, oh no, what that person hasn't got anything to work on. So everyone being a bit flexible
Mm.
requires you to try your hand at everything. I mean, some people are better at certain things than others. I know I'm better at certain things than others, but it still allows you to do different bits. And they're really good at trying to kind of stretch you at times. If you've been working on only on like characters, they'll be like, you know what, it's time for you to do
Time
some
to
environment
change.
stuff. So
Yeah.
they'll kind of like let you chop and change. Again, though, that can just depend on the needs of the show.
Mm.
Like sometimes like one of my like niche areas is like visual effects kind of type concept stuff. That's kind of where I started doing a lot of my early stuff, and I really love the nitty pickiness of it all, and I really enjoyed that stuff. But they're like, yeah, but we're also gonna like now push you into doing more environments. We're gonna push you
Okay.
into doing this and that. So it's been really nice that they kind of also try to stretch you out, especially when you're starting off. Like I know when I was junior artists, they were really kind of trying to stretch me, and like I said, like you
Mm.
kind of forced up in
Mm.
some ways, like because you're moving so quickly and doing so much work so quickly and working with so many people, like such a
Yeah.
brilliant team, like
Yeah.
you've got no choice but to kind of like run essentially before you've even learned to walk sometimes. And I remember
Right.
being like, oh
Okay.
my God, and having that panic at times, but then realizing, oh, okay, I've been running for quite some time now. Like I can actually do
Yeah, I
this.
can
So
keep up. It's
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And again, my team is really good in kind of like checking in and just like making sure that everyone's kind of like, okay, if you've been on something for a really long time
Mm.
and they're like, okay, maybe we should kind of like, let's give you a break on this show and we'll put you on something else and we'll put somebody else on this. So they try to
Yeah.
kind of keep an eye on that kind of stuff and rotate it around. So yeah.
Okay. How is it like during COVID as well? Because I know with me, I was always working from home with the
Mm.
connecting to the server and stuff. Did you have to go into the office, or was it
Oh,
fully hybrid and stuff?
we were
And
working from home. Everyone was like,
yeah.
we literally went in one day and then everything was like kicking off. They're like, okay, well, we're shipping everyone back home now. Like
Oh, okay.
everyone's going to be working from home. So
Right.
I think for the entire VFX industry, I think it was a big adjustment, especially because
Mm.
I think for a long time, this kind of role was seen as something that could only be done in the studio, because I think nobody knew what that would mean in terms of various things like tech and security and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we kind of like had no choice, and I guess people were consuming film and TV more than they ever had done before.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were shipped back home, and so we were working from home full time
Yeah.
basically.
Mm.
My department and I, we're now hybrid, so
Okay.
we've been going back into the studio a couple days a week
Mm.
for about 6 months, 6 or 7 months now.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that was also kind of good for us, I mean, it was difficult for everyone, but I
Yeah.
think we were such a small team.
Mm.
At that time, I think there were only 8 or 9 of us.
Mm.
We were checking with each other every day. So we
Yeah.
were having like Google Meets like every single day,
Yeah.
which I think is easier to do when you've got such a small team. Obviously, we've got like other departments that were much bigger. So I'm not sure if they were able to do that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so in that aspect, I was still seeing my colleagues like very early on, especially twice a day,
Yeah.
like checking in the morning and then checking in the afternoon,
Mm.
just to kind of see how everyone was mentally and
Mm.
emotionally, but then also because we were so used to seeing each other every
Yeah.
day, so used to just like looking over each other's shoulder, seeing what
Mm.
people were working on, because everyone was working on something different in some ways. And also just it was always just like a good way to learn stuff, like somebody say, oh, I've just figured this out, and you kind of just go and look over their shoulder and
Yeah.
like this new thing that they've picked up, this new thing that they've learned. Same for everyone, like juniors, seniors, art directors, like we were all just like learning new stuff. And as a junior, especially like at that time, that was really, really beneficial to kind of just be able to walk around and be like, oh, what are you doing over
Yeah.
there?
What are
Or
you
have somebody
doing?
kind of like look over, yeah, over my shoulder. But at the same time, I think for me personally, it also working from home kind of forced me to learn to get confident for
Okay.
myself,
Yeah.
like it forced like the training wheels off in a
Okay.
way. Like I was
Yeah.
already in a junior role, but I was still kind of like, oh my God, am I good enough? Like I was like imposter syndrome was
Mm.
still kind of like rife. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes not having somebody like look over
Yeah.
or just double check gave me no choice but to learn to listen to myself again and learn to
Mm.
trust myself again, because I'd again growing up, like when you're creating anything as a child, you're just doing it, like
Yeah.
you're everything's
Just
just flowing, yeah, there's
yeah.
the excitement,
Not
like
no, not technical or anything.
yeah,
You're
you're
just
not
like,
thinking
I
about
wanna
anything,
draw.
you're not
Yeah.
questioning stuff, you're just
Yeah.
like, this is great.
Yeah.
On to the next, like
Yeah.
this is also this is great. And I think I'd lost some of that along the
Yeah.
way because
Mm.
of imposter syndrome, and then
Yeah.
just like, am I good enough, can I do this?
Mm.
And so kind of being just kind of like working in like my living room and not checking in the same ways that it was before, that forced me to like reattach to that, to relearn that pattern of just like, I can just do this and like it's fine. I can just do this and trust that I know what I'm doing. I can just do this and trust my decision making. And if something needs to be changed, it needs to be changed, but also really learn the art of, oh yeah, like already knowing that critique isn't personal. Like it's never personal, it's good, it makes your work better. But when you've really got a bit of imposter syndrome, like you worry about that sometimes and what that could mean. And learning to just be like, yep, critique is just, that's it, it's just critique. Like I don't have to hold this in any shape or form. Like that's okay, it's fine. So I think I learned to trust myself a hell of a lot more, which I'm really, really grateful for.
So in terms of like teaching yourself certain things, like what do you use as like a reference that kind of pushes your work, especially from, I guess, from when you were a junior to like now? Like what would you say is like the most beneficial thing that you've
I think a lot of it comes down to, firstly, the thing that I learned for me especially, and it's going to be different for everyone else. I think one of the important things is figuring out how you learn best, and there'll be a lot of trial and error in that, because I think everybody has like different opinions on what you should do and how you should do things. And I kind of learned that, again, it just depends on who you are. Sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming. So there were times where I was taking on so much that I just froze because I didn't know what to do with all of that. So I had to figure out how I learned and sifted through things. But a couple of things that were beneficial for me, like I realized that having too much doesn't work for me. So I pared it down to kind of try to keep things simple so I could digest that. And two things that were really simple and worked really, really well for me, and they were recommended, and now I recommend them to everyone because I love them, were two books, especially one called Framed Ink, which is by Marcos Mateo Mestre. I hope I've said his name correctly. And it's all about kind of like composition and lighting, and he's kind of like a storyboard artist but also a comic artist, and it's just beautiful. And when I was reading that, I figured out and learned that a lot of the stuff that I picked up already from comics, I kind of knew this stuff. I just didn't know there was a name for it. I didn't know that composition was the name for it. I was already doing this stuff naturally now because I'd learned it, or at least had seen it and understood it from all like my comic manga life. Which is still ongoing. And then the other one, which was Color and Light by James Gurney, which like was also like a life changer because I didn't realize how much I didn't understand color and light, and I was quite scared of it, and just like how to harmonize those stuff. But then in general, just learning about the core fundamentals, especially when it comes to art. I think no matter what you do, having an understanding of those basic fundamentals in any creative space is going to be beneficial to you. So that will be like color, light, composition, like things like staging as well, but then also storytelling. And that's also going to help your stories in how you're trying to frame them. Because when you think about writing, there's kind of, people talk about having the different acts, and then you talk about having the different stages. Like art kind of has that as well. At least if you've kind of got those core fundamentals or an understanding of those, you can create anything, in my opinion, essentially. And once I was able to get a better understanding of that, I think that really, really helped me, because then when I was struggling to kind of like do a concept, I would just strip it back to, okay, well, what do I want my composition to be, and figure that out. What story am I trying to tell? Well, it's about this character, so that means this is ideally where I should place them, because this is where it's going to draw the eye to them. And then what can I layer on top of that? Well, my lighting also needs to be able to tell that story. So all these elements help tell your story. So the lighting will help tell my story. Well, if it's a story about this character, that means the lighting needs to be geared towards them in some shape or form. Otherwise, if my lighting is geared towards the car, then that means whoever's looking at this image is going to think the story is about this car instead of this character. And then things like values as well, and like contrast, and how high contrast is where you're going to have the highest point of like detail in theory, so your eye is going to be drawn to that. So learning all these things really helped me to start understanding how I could really tell the stories that I want to tell visually. So there was that, so it was kind of like having those books, but then also just, I'd always kind of loved film, but was just consuming them, I started to actually pay more attention to what I was looking at. And
Mm.
if I was like, oh, I really like this, what is it that I really liked about it? Was it like the lighting? Was it the staging? Or was it just the story point? Was it the simplicity of that composition? And really like actively paying attention to them. And then I started like just referencing. I like there was this whole thing before, like growing up, where people would be like, references are cheating. You shouldn't look at references. So for a long time, I've been trying to draw something just in my imagination. Can't use
Yeah, I
photos
think it's my
to look at that as a
imagination.
reference. Yeah.
Like
And then I
fighting with
learned like,
it.
no, like the world is your reference point in so many ways. So I
Yeah.
started like taking photos, collecting images, and just building a bank of references that I can return to, and I still return to for like whether it's for ideas for lighting or ideas for positioning, ideas for like if I'm doing characters, if I'm doing comic stuff, then ideas for all that kind of stuff. And then just going out and paying attention, like seeing these things out in the world and then suddenly being like, oh, that's a good idea, even if I just scribbled it down.
Yeah.
Like learning to just get my ideas out so they weren't just sitting in my brain. I didn't always have to turn them into a big concept, but sometimes just the art of scribbling. So I think I had to learn to just again to just fall in love with all the different elements and
Yeah.
the aspects of it, and learn how these things were beneficial to my storytelling. So yeah, for me, like it was simplicity and process within that, things that I can return back to, even if even still now, if I'm unsure of something, I will stop, either scribble over it, figure like and refigure things out, refigure out the composition, what's not working, like all that kind of stuff. Like I've been working on some like comic stuff recently, just like with a friend, and I was like, okay, this isn't working like at all. Why is that not working? Returning to that, like stripping things back. Okay, well, is it my composition? Is it how I've got the lighting? Oh, actually, it turns out it's the colors. None of these colors are like harmonizing any in the way, like the contrast of these colors are highlighting the wrong thing. So not being afraid to also go back and redo things, because then sometimes you find that you redo them much quicker as well.
Yeah, I guess it goes into my other point of like what inspires you when it comes to like, especially with your personal work. Because growing up with me, I didn't really draw many black characters, and I guess it was just because of the media that I watched, and I don't know, I just never really put myself first. I guess that's probably, you know, life in life in general, and just also just because just watching those of like media, like films and TV and stuff, and there's not many like black characters. But was there, because I find that like with your work there's like a lot of like traditional aspects of like African like centric sort of like elements. So I do wonder if it's like, is there certain things that, I mean, maybe with your background in like history, art history, or just maybe you just want to see more, so you did more research and just implemented those into your work. Like what inspires you basically?
It's literally everything that you've just said is like exactly the same. Like I didn't always start off that way. Like again, it was the media that we were consuming. We just didn't really, we weren't then recreating it, and we weren't recreating ourselves because we didn't see ourselves in that way. I think one of the things that kicked off something for me, I can't remember what it was, because I was also a big reader. I used to read a lot, and I still read a lot, and I love it. I love books, imagination, everything. I remember reading something once where somebody had said, like talking about like characters, they were just like, think about all the things that you read. Do you automatically see that character as being a person of color? Do you automatically see them as white? And then that suddenly dawned on me, even if they hadn't described the character, what they look like in terms of their race, I'd always realized that I'd never perceived the character as anything other than maybe being white or not looking like me at all. And that was like oh, okay. And I think that slowly started to like do something in my mind. It was still a long time ago, but it started to do something. And then I actively started to impose like us into these books that I was reading. I actively was just like, well, no, this is going to be like a black girl, black woman, like doing this. And then that started to like inform my storytelling as well. And then also I think the more that I just was growing more comfortable in just like being myself in various ways, again, like when I say that like working professionally as an artist has had such a profound impact on me, it really has, on so many areas of my life, and has really forced me to address so many areas of my life as well, and that visibility being one of them. And the more I started to be more comfortable in that and being seen and wanting to kind of be seen, just also just wanting to kind of give my art like that voice as well, and learning more about myself and learning more about like my history and wanting to again voice that in some shape or form in a way that made sense to me, in a way that felt safe for me, that felt safe for like what my inner child kind of wanted to say and wanted to express and still wants to say and still wants to express, like just those nuances, and like that became kind of like really important to me. And then I actively started seeking out afterwards like shows, or like especially animated shows like like Avatar. Korra is like one of my favorite
Yeah.
characters ever. And it's like it's just like one of my favorite shows ever.
Yeah. Same.
Like I love it. I don't
I
even care what
love
anyone says.
Avatar.
I just think
So
it's
good.
brilliant. Like the whole Avatar universe is just
Yeah, I
brilliant. I
can't
think
wait.
Korra is. I'm so excited. Oh my god! And I think Korra is brilliant as well, especially
Yeah.
as a character of color. That
Yeah.
she is able to be. This is my favorite thing about it, that she's able to be so flawed and just be, you know,
Yeah.
like she's able to just be this character that exists in this world. She is far from perfect.
Yeah.
She is cocky. She thinks she can do this, but she
Yeah.
grows. She
Yeah.
has this entire journey, which I don't think that we've always been afforded when we've been kind of shown in various medias. Like it's either kind of been tokenized or just shown as like one way, or like we aren't allowed to just be, we aren't allowed to just exist as these characters. And when I look at someone like Cora, she was allowed to just be who she was regardless. Like not that it's not paying attention to who she is as a woman of color, but that's not her story, you know. That's like she's just there, and that's and I find that to be a beautiful thing. I think it's important at the same time. And obviously they've also said themselves there's a lot of differences they kind of, or changes they would have made, especially in terms of like voice casting. But I have always loved that she's allowed to be a character of color who exists as in various ways. That, as I said, that she's got all these various traits about her, because everyone has all these various traits about them. And I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to, that's how I started to think as well. I wanted to kind of create all of that, like to be in these scenarios, but then also at the same time still like still express like who I feel I am and the stories that I kind of like want to tell through my visuals, and also show that because it's important. I still think it's important. I think it's always going to be important. Like you can't be what you can't see. And I think it's really easy for a lot of people to take that for granted when they're so used to seeing themselves always in so many ways. And I think for us, we're not used to that. And I wanted to be able to just I wanted to be able to kind of like create things that I hadn't been able to see myself. It's a long-winded way of getting there, but
No, and it shows,
trying
and
to explain it at least.
it's so nice. Like, yeah, just love your work. And I guess this is a bit of a side topic, but when I first saw you at, because this was before the pandemic, you were at the Vertex talk, and it was just only on a whim that I wasn't actually allowed to go in because I didn't have like the right ticket, but I went in anyway. I sneaked in anyway. Oops. And then I just like, I saw you on the stage and I was like, oh my god, like all these like emotions. Like I'm so happy, or so happy for you that you know was doing concept work for like films. And because I haven't seen any like person of color or black person in the visual effects. Because I guess a bit of a background from like my university is that I went to Bournemouth and they had Frame Store there, but there wasn't a lot of the times it was just like just not diverse at all. And in terms of on the course, or going to the studios or who was teaching the course, and we had someone come in talking about like concept work, and they were just like, there's not many jobs, so you can't do it. So in the back of my mind I just thought, I'm not gonna, okay, I'll have to find something else. And then when I saw you, I was just like, oh, there is someone like a black woman that has done it. I was like, yes, finally. Like so it's just really refreshing. And like how your work is it's just like so amazing to look at. And I can't wait to see like more of your work and more
thank you
stuff.
And don't get me wrong, like our numbers in visual effects is still tiny, like percentage wise it's like less than like 7% or whatnot, but it's changing. But I think there's so many nuances to it. I think us being visible and talking about it is going to be helpful, like being able to kind of like talk to kids as well, so they can
Yeah.
see, like I do a lot of kind of like student talks as well, because I know how important this
Mm,
is to even just be able to see somebody in this space.
mm,
And like when I've spoken to like other people like in the company, and they've been like, oh yeah, I got here because I saw this supervisor talk about this and that really inspired me. And I was just like, yeah, these things are important to be able to see yourself in
mm.
some shape or form, to know it's possible, to then also be able
Yeah.
to engage with parents so they know that we can do this, like that
Mm,
it's a safe space for us to do this, but then that we can make money from doing these things as well,
yeah.
because that's also what's important. There's that safety element, and our parents like worry about that stuff, as any
Yeah.
parent would do. So knowing that
Yeah.
it's a safe space, but then there's also additional level of support, because you step into these places where you may be the only one for
Mm,
a long period of time. So first, to make sure that you are supported in some shape or form, so keeping up like whatever communication is important to, like I'll still talk to like students and stuff like that. Like they'll still be like messaging me, like being able to be supportive in some shape or form. But
mm.
then also, I think there's wider conversations to be had about then also that technical element, like making sure that people have the things that they need, especially visual effects. They have the equipment that they need
Yeah.
to do a lot of this stuff, because not everybody can just suddenly get like a laptop or a computer. Not everybody
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
then get or use Photoshop. I mean, there are definitely more free software out there now, because we do a mixture of 3D and 2D. So
Yeah.
things like Blender are free so people can access. But again, it's all these other things, like can they
Mm,
have access to it? Can they use it? And how can we continue to support people
mm.
so they have this stuff? But I think that's a wider, like that's going into like curriculums and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's still a hell of a lot of work
Mm,
that needs to be done. But it's, even when I see how far we've kind of come, or at least how we're progressing in the last couple of years, I think
mm.
there was no choice but to, like the world had no choice but to stop and pay attention to
Yeah.
see kind of what was going on.
Mm,
And that forced a shift. And so there has been a lot of work done, even when I see it with my own company, like the work that's being done and continues to be done, especially for like underrepresented groups as a whole. I feel really grateful to be in a position and in a place where those conversations are actively happening and still
mm.
are happening, and things are still being done. And I think that's important. Like it's not all going to change overnight, which at the beginning was like, oh, I want it to all change overnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knowing that it's a long game, it's a long-term
Yeah.
process.
And it's
But
still going, I think.
yeah, it's exactly, it's always
Yeah.
going to be ongoing, but like
Yeah.
laying those foundations. I think we were at a stage like in general where we were trying to build on rocky foundations
Mm,
and rebuild, but I think now we're starting to like get to the root of things, that we're at
mm.
least beginning to try to plant new seeds. Sorry for all the analogies,
No,
but we're at
that's
least
good.
beginning to kind of like plant new seeds. We're doing
Yeah.
things like this and
Mm,
being able to engage with students and parents, and hopefully give them the things that they need to be able to, firstly, to see us,
yeah.
and then to be able to like feel safe enough and have the stuff that they need and support that they need to
Yeah.
continue to kind of like create these stories. And there are just so many ways of doing that now. So yeah, we're getting
Mm,
there slowly but
yeah.
surely, but we're getting there.
Yeah. I guess to wrap up, thank you for your time. I guess a couple of questions like
Yeah, no,
just
it's cool.
what
I'm
just
sorry, I've dragged us on quite a
no,
bit
no, no.
with my stories.
No, it's so good. Like everything is just like so informative. So thank you. But yeah, I guess one of them is like what is your favorite project that you've worked on, and what's your favorite film to date? So I think that's a probably easier question.
Film to date, as in any film that's come out in general.
Yeah, or even like or animation film ideally, but if it's
Um,
a
so favorite project will probably be was kind of like two, because so Artemis Fowl being one of them, because that was like my first like role as a concept artist,
mm,
so that it'll always hold a special place in my heart.
yeah,
um and I was just like, I can do this. And then Wandavision,
yeah.
because
Yes.
that was like my first like proper like full-time like Marvel projects that I was working on. And again, I'd grown up like reading this stuff, and House of M, which is like what it was based off,
Mhm.
which is what WandaVision is based off of, is like one of my favorite
Yeah,
Marvel
I love
stories.
that. Yeah.
and and just like all of that kind of stuff. And so I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah.
And growing up, I'd listened to there was this artist, like a musician called like Adam Warrock. Adam Warlock, based on the name of Adam Warlock, who's like a Marvel character.
Okay.
And he like had these brilliant mixtapes, which were like about loads of stuff about like he did a mixtape for Firefly, did mixtapes for like Marvel stuff, just like his own stuff. And I just loved it. And there were these 2 songs on there that I just used to listen to over and over again. One of them was called Vision, one was like another one which is based on Scarlet Witch, so based on Wonder. And I remember like when I started work on Wandavision, those songs just kept coming into my brain, and I was just thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't believe like I've done this. Like I can't believe I'm now working on this stuff. This is something that I've loved for so long, and I was just like, oh God, this is actually happening. So yeah, WandaVision. That was a lot of like, oh, feels.
It was so good. I think I've watched that so many times. So
oh, it was brilliant. I was like nerding out so much, just like asking all these questions, and then the visual effects supervisor is just like, she's like, oh, you really know a lot about this stuff. I was like,
yes, I do.
Yeah. So there's that, and oh God, favorite animated film to date. I was actually just rewatching Akira, and I still think it's absolutely beautiful.
I need to watch that now, I guess.
Oh, it's just beautiful for so many reasons, and I was just like doing some research into it again as well, and I was just like, oh my God, they created like 50 colors specifically for it. It's still one of the highest budgets ever given to like an animation, but then also like the history and the context of it and the story that they're trying to tell through that, and just like I just think it's amazing, the sound design, the visuals, everything. So I'd say Akira, at least in terms of what I was rewatching recently. Korra is still up there. I know it's not a film.
That still counts.
But Korra is still there. Your Name, which had me sobbing. But that wasn't recent, I guess. So I'm saying loads of things that
no, it's all good.
I've kind of rewatched recently, but aren't recent films. I think probably the last film I saw recently. Sorry, brainwave. The last 2 animated films that I saw in the cinema. A couple of months ago, I saw the new Dragon Ball Super.
Oh.
I thought it was brilliant. It was just like pure nostalgia in my life. I was like, yes. And I thought that was great for nostalgia reasons. But then also a couple of days ago, I went to see at the Prince Charles End of Evangelion. I've seen it loads of times.
Okay.
An anime film. It's like the Evangelion series is like one of my favorites ever, and I've seen it loads of times. But again, seeing it was my first time seeing it on the big screen, and again, just visually, I just think it's incredible. Story wise, I'm like, I think it's incredible. So those, and then I'm so sorry, I've given so many, but the last live action thing that I thought was incredible, and I know a lot of people probably say it. 2. One of them, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Okay.
That had me sobbing. I just thought it was beautiful. Especially
really
the storytelling. The way that I boil it down to is a story about a mother and her daughter, and a mother of color and her daughter of color, and that like there were just so many crossovers and nuances that I just thought, this is right. So I just thought that was brilliant. And then yesterday I watched a Korean film called The Broker, which I just thought was amazing, and I highly recommend, and it throws up a lot of questions about what it means to be I guess a parent, but then also loads of other things. I think it holds a lot of strong ethical and political questions. And I just thought that was a brilliant film. So I've just given you like a whole catalogue.
No, that's good.
I can't decide on just one.
There's some I've watched, there's some I haven't, so it'd be good to
there's loads. I go to the cinema a lot as well. Like I go to the Prince Charles a lot. I've been to the cinema 5 times already in the last 5 days. So 2 films yesterday, 2 films a couple days. So I go to the cinema a lot and watch them.
No, that's good, because then it's like you're just refreshing new stories and new things.
I think it's important as well to just watch a range of stuff. Sorry, just like a last note. Because it's just helpful. I think there are things that you're always going to love the most and be passionate about, whether that's a genre or a style. But one of the things I found that at least helped me learn and grow a lot is looking at various other things as well. Like I remember when I was still doing my art as a hobby for A level, and I was going to pick my A levels. One of my teachers, my humanities teacher, was just like, "Well, have you considered doing biology as well as A level?" I was like, "I ain't going to be no scientist. My parents want it, but I don't think I can do it. And biology isn't art." And he was like, "Are you sure about that? Like, you like drawing people? Are you not like biology?" And that completely switched my brain in terms of how I thought about things. And I did biology, I started to learn about anatomy, and then realized how much that informed my ability to draw characters and express like the body in various ways, because I was understanding what was happening beneath that. And so I found the same with like just creating in general, like looking at various things is always gonna inform your learning. Like it's you've got to look at things holistically. You may not like this style or that, but there are going to be things that you can learn from that, whether it's how they express line, how they express color, or how that visual will tell a story in some shape or form. Like I've been watching also a lot of Wong Kar-wai films, and his stuff is just like brilliant. So we did things like In the Mood for Love and with Tony Leung, and it's just visually again just absolutely beautiful and incredible. And that also was switching on something for me, at least in the way that he does it. And there's a lot to also be said for people just creating things the way that they want to create them based on how they view and understand the world. And because I think there's sometimes we can get bogged down with this is the right way to do it, and that's not the right way to do it. And what that does is take away again from what we learned as children, which was to just explore, to just play, to just create. And I think being able to look at loads of different things, at least for me, has helped me remember that I like creating is about my voice. Yeah, there are nuances, and I did say there are things that I still return back to, things like composition, especially if I know I've got a very specific story that I want to tell. But then it's using those elements in the way that I want to really express what I want to express, because I now have that understanding of a lot of those fundamentals. So it's because Wong Kar-wai has that understanding of color that he's able to use it in whatever way that he wants to tell his story. It's because people have got various understandings of like certain experiences in their life. They're able to tell the stories that they want through those scripts, like just all these various things. So like taking all these understandings and utilizing them in the way that you want to really express how you want, and really honoring what that child in you also wants to express, because it doesn't go away. And it still has a voice, and that voice comes out in whatever it is that we create. It also, like, our voice of now also comes out in that way. So yeah, sorry.
No, it's great. No, thank you for so much of your wisdom and insights of your work and the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the whole video. I really appreciate your time. I hope to see you in the next one. If there's any artists that you'd like me to get in contact with, please let me know in the comments below. You can look at more videos of people on my channel. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.